Hi Ben, and so I've had a little look at your latest video and your files, um, and I just want to go over a couple of things just to clarify. You start talking about grouping and parenting in your video, and I think you've mixed up the terms slightly. Um, let's just do some little demonstrations. So I've got two locators here now, and if I wanted to group them, then I can put them in an own group, which is basically containing all those things. This is also parenting, because basically what we've done is we created a group and we put these locators underneath that group, making them a child of that group. Now that's parenting as well. So I can select this and select this and press P, and I will make this a child of this, and then the group will be its parent. So that's parenting in its basic sense. That's basically saying that you're manipulating the hierarchy, moving around the objects to so that they have different parents, that they're under different hierarchies. Now, what you're talking about when you're saying parenting, I assume you're talking about constraints. It sounds like when you're talking about the invisible node, the connection, and all of that. And we can do this. Let me just see if I move this up here. Oh, sorry. That I can make this the parent constraint. Will make this the target for this locator, so that this locator will follow this. So if I select the parent in master slave constraint parent, and then if we now just maintain offset off, now basically we get this parent constraint. So basically if we move this locator, the locator 2, locator 1 will follow. Now if I move group 1, locator 1 will follow as well. Now notice that I haven't done anything to locator 2, and locator 2 has these values, locator 1 has these new values, because it's not getting the new translation values that we're getting. Well, sorry, it is getting these new translation values that group 1 has. So this is really useful for creating a link between objects that need to be in different hierarchies, or where it's just useful to separate out things. Because as soon as you start like parenting things, that's when you can really mess up. Something that I often see from a lot of new riggers that I don't think you did in your file, if I remember correctly, is that they make controls and then they parent their joints underneath the control, which is not good, because you don't want that. You want to have your joints, especially if this is like a full-on hierarchy. You want to be able to like separate them out, and as soon as you start using constraints, that just gives you a lot more flexibility as well to deal with this. So I just wanted to go over that quickly, and if I was unclear on anything, please let us know so we can give you some more information, or if not, hopefully you can look up on this and have a little test. The good thing about constraints as well is that you can give them offsets, which can be really handy. Basically, if you do maintain offset, you can keep them as if you parented them underneath. You will have that offset, which you can put in. That's always really useful. So have a little play with that and let us know if there's anything that was not clear. I just glanced over this real quick now. So let's go over to your file. So this is your file at the moment, and hello look at the expressions that you made, one expression does nothing. The other one does this, which is perfectly fine. And then here is exactly what you were saying, is you're just connecting up stuff, which is where you would a lot easier do like just a connection in the connection editor, because now if you rename your cube root control to root cube control, this is going to fail. You need to rename this whole expression again. With connection, it doesn't matter. You can just rename it, because the connections between the nodes, they're always static. You can rename the nodes, whatever, because the connections to and from a node, they're not dependent on the names. They're just looking at, this is a node, this is going out from it, this is going in. So it just leaves it a lot more flexible if you need to rename, especially if you're in the beginning of making a rig, and if you're testing out different things, it will just be a lot easier. And especially stuff like this, just use connections. You can use the connection editor, but I just really like the node editor because it's starting to become really nice and powerful, and I think in 2016 it looks a lot better. I'm on 2015. So yeah, if just go out. Now, another thing that I mentioned, you can see here that you've got the point constraint coming in on this. And another thing is you don't really have a rotate on this root control. You do have a scale, but it's happening from the world origin, which isn't really what you'd want. You'd want it to be at the origin of this control, or like the middle point here, because imagine your animator is placing it somewhere, and then it's like, oh, okay, cool, now I need to be a bit bigger, and it's like, oh shit, no, now he's gotta like place it back, and then it's like, oh, I need it to be a bit bigger, and it's like, oh, I gotta place it back again, and so on and so on. So you really don't want to do a setup like that. You just want to keep those rotation and scale channels open, and just make a hierarchy that works with what you have. So if I just put this back, and yeah, also if I move this and then move this, you can see it snaps back. And that happens for every single one of these. Right, so that's not good. And again, like we were talking about, if I now set a keyframe, you can see that these, which were constrained, they're now all green, and the ones that were not, they're red. So if I go to like frame 30, I do this, then, okay, everything looks good. I just move this, then, that's strange. Now, this isn't moving with this. So we're having a bit of a discrepancy here. And that's what's happening with this whole blend here, is that you're messing up the connection between this point constraint and everything. You can see now that when that's keyframed, it suddenly no longer follows along with the main control, which is a big no-no. And for a root control like this, you'd really want to be able to move it around, scale it, and rotate it, especially like translate and rotate minimums. I like the idea that you put in with like these moving the corners. Another thing, let's just open up here, was if I show the cube lattice, one thing to be wary of as well is when you see this corner, when I move this, I'd expect this corner to move and this to move like 50%. But if you look at this now, you're actually getting this moving and this moving, right? And that's really not what we want here, because that, well, I wouldn't want that, if at least. So that doesn't look right to me. So if we have a little look at the component editor, we can see what kind of weights we got going on for the smooth skin. So you can see we've got some really off weights here. We'd want this to be 0.5, I assume, and this to be 0.5 as well. And crap. Something that I didn't check is, you using classic linear? Strange. Let me double check that again. I thought you were using post for a second there. 0.5. Oh, sorry. It's a bit too early for me. I forgot to zero out the other weights, so we want that to be 0.5, like that. So now you'd want that for all of these, basically. So what we want to do is, if I just select this one, we do component editor, and like all these little weights, I'm just going to zero those out. These ones as well. And this one's at 2.5. So they're all now 0.5, 0.5. So if I move it now, you can see they're not moving. The easiest way to get this to work is if you just select all your joints, and then in the smooth bind tool, you can do max influences and set it to 2. I find that should work if you go like a joint here, joint here, joint here, joint here, joint here, 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 here. Then this corner will get 100% to that joint. This will get 50% of this and 50% of this, and so on and so on. In my test, that worked quite fine. If not, you can always, I would recommend you doing that, and then you can go in and double check it in the component editor and tweak it if necessary. Let me see. So you've got the squash stuff happening as well as an expression, and yeah, sorry, let me just open up this. So yeah, went through this, that you want to do the groups on this. So I kind of did a similar rig to what you have, just cleaning it up a bit. So let's have a look at it. So this is basically my version of your rig. I can move it, I can rotate it, and I can scale it. And if I move this away, it squashes and stretches. And also I've kept in so that you can rotate and also scale the top and bottom of this, just for a bit of simplicity and showing you a different approach to this. I kept instead of having like a scaling attribute, I just kept the scale Y on this control, because basically if I go in and show you my hierarchy, you can see that, let's just go through from the top. At the very top, I've got a cube rig group, which is basically just a container for everything that's in my rig. You really want this to be able to just quickly and easily just have everything in one place. That just makes your whole setup a lot nicer and tidier. Underneath here, I've got a global control group, which is just keeping all of my controls. I've got a parts group where I've put in some lattices and a cluster. Just a model group with my model, and then a skeleton group which contains my skeletons. So what I've done here is that I have a global control, which controls, like moves the whole thing So you move it into place like for the gross positions, and then you scale it, whatever. And then I kept your setup of having like the mid control, the main. So you can move this around as well and rotate it, and then you can scale it up and down for getting like squash and stretch. And underneath here I've got the control groups for the top and bottom control. And basically these controls are parent constrained, these joints are parent constrained and scale constrained to their respective controls. So basically when I move this control, it moves the bottom joint, and when I move the top control, I move the top joint. So I've just kept that in there. Instead of having all these joints separate, I've just put them underneath one master joint that I can then move, translate, and scale to get all these. I didn't add in your extra completely forgetting your extra controls, but it's basically you can move these around as you want as well. So you can see that. You would just have to add some new controls underneath this top control. You would add in, let's just do it real quick. If I do that, and if I just do that underneath there, zero these out. So if I move that to here, for instance, one nice way of being sure that you're getting no real differences between when you're connecting up your controls is to basically select the joint, select the group above your control, and then do a parent constraint without maintain offset, because that will basically align your control group perfectly to that joint. And then get rid of that control. So now if that constraint, so if you select that control now, and then the joint, and we do a parent constraint again, now you can see we have that going along there. This follows completely, and then we can still move this about, yeah, it doesn't do anything with rotate. So that's how we easily can just extend upon that, just keep more groups underneath here. We'll do another one for all of these. So how I'm driving this lattice is basically I've added in 2 lattices. Let me just hide these groups real quick, because now you can see the real power in this setup is that I can do 0 to get all these back to the original position. I can do 1 in scale, and that is everything there. Let me see. Oh, did I probably messed up a bit when yeah, you can see that is not how it should be. So yeah, I'm just getting rid of that. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you do stuff on the fly. So if I go in now and turn off the envelope on these, yeah, so there's a tiny bit, probably from when I added in that extra controller. But you can basically see that it's back at the origin. I've got all my controls centered out, and it's just easy to come back to where you start. So I did 2 lattices basically, where I have one that's at the origin, and that has the cluster on it, which gets all the scaling. So basically what happens is that you can see that that FFD2 lattice is affecting the mesh first. So basically it's scaling it in first, and then afterwards we have this FTD1 which is moving it in, and where we're doing like all our rotation as well and other scaling. It basically allows us to separate out this the shaping of it, and then you have the translation, rotation, and scale on another one, and it just makes it a bit easier. So I did your connection. Let me just get this into the, oh, not the graph editor. Sorry. I want to get the node editor. So here you can see, if I just open up this a bit, this is my node setup. I'm basically taking the translate from the top joint and the bottom joint, and I'm feeding that into a distance between node, which is basically the same as going like create measure tools, distance between, but instead of getting like those two locators, I basically just went in here, and if you press tab, you can create a new node. I just went distance between, and I'm using 1, 2, and 3 to scroll between these like connection states basically. And if you do show all attributes, you can here basically put in a vector 3 or like a XYZ value, and then it will figure out the distance between those two. And then I'm piping out that distance between those 2 points into a multiply divide node, which is basically exactly the same as you were doing. And then I'm taking just the whole scale and then piping that into the cluster. It's nice how you did it with just having like one scale attribute as well. That works quite nice. But I just want to use the whole global scale for this for now. Normally, you can just do like take one, for instance, like the scale X, and pipe into all this. But that doesn't really matter. So just to go through this again, I have the top and bottom. Those points, they go into the distance between. The distance between goes into this multiply divide node, which is set to divide. And then the scale goes into input 1, and then the output from that goes into my cluster handle, which is scaling that FFD2 lattice, the one that's just doing the squash and stretchy part of it. So if I go back here, so that's that one. This works because I haven't grouped these under anything that's moving. So basically this, the translate values that they have, they are in world space basically. So that's why this scaling also works to create the squashy effect, is because when we're scaling this, we're moving away this control, which then again moves these away through the parent constraint, which increases the distance between them, and then which is driving the node setup for this. And when you're separating everything out like this, you can rotate, you can scale, and translate it away. And yeah. Squashy. And it also works with this. You can rotate it, and you can thin it, scale it. Yeah. I hope this is giving you some pointers. I'll upload this files for you to have a look through as well. And let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything else that we can help you with. And yeah, keep asking questions and keep learning. Good luck to you, man. Bye.